What's up, everybody? Isaac here, Civil Engineering Academy. Excited to share with you another podcast episode. I'm excited about this one. We actually discuss a recent article produced by the ASCE president, President Truax, and he actually writes an article about the decline of civil engineers, their enrollment, the need for civil engineers in the workforce because they're very high in demand and projected to need quite a few of them. So I bring my brother Mark on today. We discuss this article, some bullet points. We also discuss a huge elephant in the room that isn't really discussed in the article, but might be touched upon. So, it's still a good thing, a great article to check out. We'll link that in the show notes. But President Dennis Truax talks about this as he's leaving the ASCE presidency. I guess he talks about some really interesting facts about civil engineers and the state that they're in. So we talk about it today. You're going to want to check it out. It's coming up right after this. All right, we are going. We are live. Mark, what's going on?
Hey, just enjoying another special time, Isaac.
Throwing down another drink on a nice day.
Yep. Loving it.
Got mine. Ready to go.
Ready to go.
So we ran across an interesting article we wanted to chat about today, and that's from the ASCE president, Dennis Truax, El Presidente. He's on his way out, sounds like. And he wrote an article detailing kind of the state of civil engineering as a whole in terms of workforce and those leaving, those coming in, those are graduating from college. And right now, those numbers don't look great, it sounds like. So I thought it would be fun to bring you on. Let's talk about maybe some bullet points from that article and maybe address the big elephant in the room, which he never even addresses in the article, but is the very first comment in the article after in the comment section. So anyway, with that, let's get after it. So the U.S. Bureau of Statistics projects that there's about 25,000 engineers needed each year throughout this decade. And that is a projection based on just for the amount of work that's out there. It doesn't account for, in his article, he says that doesn't account for engineers retiring, and also like special legislation that pops up where it requires even more engineers to.
Well, yeah, we've got that Infrastructure Investments and Job Act that's out there, right? That's just released a ton of money into infrastructure investment. So how are we going to cover all of that?
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was pretty interesting. He goes on to quote that Moody's estimates that infrastructure projects will create about 884,000 jobs by 2030, and a per capita income will increase by 10.5% as a result. So I guess I can't say he doesn't address salary at all, but I guess just in general, it sounds like the need for engineers is still there, is still really viable, and is growing. What are your thoughts around how it's growing, and maybe what you think you see in terms of hiring engineers, the population of people wanting to be an engineer, things of that nature?
Yeah, well, I see. I serve on an industry advisory board for a local university, and one of the big things that they have their goals, right? They want to see a certain number of enrollment into their programs, and they've done things like start new programs like construction engineering that we've talked about before. But what they see is a lot of the younger folks coming out of high school age folks. They perceive the engineering career path as requiring maybe an inordinate amount of work. Right? There's a certain amount of technical skills that one has to acquire before you can become an engineer. And the perception is that that's maybe a little bit tougher road than, I don't know, say a path in a career path in business, or a career path that's maybe not a STEM, right,
Yeah.
type path. But I don't know. It's a perception they're trying to change. They have some different marketing campaigns that they've initiated that targets that demographic. That basically says, if you've got an interest in science, you like to figure out how things go together. If you have a basic interest in how things work in the world, then man, engineering's probably the way to go. And so there's been a lot of efforts to try to change that perception. Um, and
Hmm.
again, that's what I'm seeing in this industry advisory board, and that's at a civil engineering department here at the University of Utah.
Cool. So one of the things he starts talking about is what the I guess the steps to combat this is his idea of developing a workforce development program, and then he questions what that program should be teaching. So maybe I could ask you this, but his question is basically, should the program help students think critically, explore and challenge concepts, and debate constructively, or should it focus on technical or trade skills needed in the workplace? Um, do you see anything like that when you're sitting on this board on the influence of what is being taught in the university level?
Yeah, it's what's happening at that university level is they're trying to address this by um, they're trying to create a link between the technical, the theoretical, right? They're trying to create a link between academia and what is actually practically done in the field. Meaning, for like, again, I keep referring to this construction engineering program because when
Yes,
they
you had a big
initially,
role in that.
I did
You had
have
a
a
big
big role
role
in
in
that.
like helping.
Yeah, and so I keep referring back to this, but I'll use it again to prove my point here. They're trying to create this link between the technical and the practical. So as young people realize that math has a practical application. If I want to solve a certain problem, and it's a constructability problem, and it's some kind of infrastructure. Let's just use a simple example of a building, right? If I want to build a building that maybe is going to be a hospital, right? And that building has to support the live and dead loads that are going to be imposed on that building, and that it's going to have to resist any seismic loads and wind loads that get induced into that building. um, Using math and technical um, skills, I can use those to implement something that has some real tangible, real life effects. Right? It's not just going through and solving problems on a piece of engineering paper, right? The old green paper that everybody loved to use.
Hmm.
It's it's identifying a problem, using math and your technical skills to solve the problem, and then actually seeing that solution get implemented, right? There's a level of satisfaction that is derived from doing that, right? And so they're trying to make a link between those two worlds, saying, given this technical knowledge that you'll have if you go through one of our engineering programs, look what you can do with that. Look at how satisfactory this is, because you've identified a problem, you've helped solve the problem, and then you've put the solution into a practical use, and makes people's lives better, right? It makes society better, and you've contributed, and this is all a good thing, and it brings a lot of job satisfaction. So um,
Yeah,
that's what they're trying to do. Does that make sense?
it does. And I know here at Civil Engineering Academy, we're going to have a future episode where we're going to be talking more about that. Um, there's a big campaign right now that's being pushed to help the public or just people that are just interested in, maybe they don't know they're interested in engineering, but they know, you know, they go to stadiums, they watch ball games, how is stuff built, and there's been a larger rise I've seen even on YouTube of just like civil engineering channels that talk about how the world works around them and how stuff is built.
Yeah.
Well, in order to figure some of this stuff out in detail, because that's kind of more for the masses, to really see how that stuff works, you got to go to school. You got to jump through the hoops and
Well, yeah,
be
and it's
trained.
amazing how much of that stuff isn't even recognized, right? Yeah,
Yes,
we all just take it for granted everywhere we drive. There's engineering behind all of that infrastructure that supports our transportation system, right? Every building we ever go into, buildings that we live in, all of
the water we drink,
the water we drink, the
the
sanitation systems that we use, right?
power
Everything,
lines.
everything that's working in the background that just supports our lifestyle is just it's taken for granted. And so I think you're onto something when you say that, is because that's part of it, is getting young people and just people in general to realize that what civil engineering does and what it supports is essentially our entire lifestyle, right? Everything that we
Yep.
enjoy
That you don't think about
that you don't think about. Exactly.
because it just is there. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, good points. Well, in his article, he also talks about a kind of a third thing, a third looming thing that's out there. And we kind of alluded to this a little bit talking about college, but he notes that there are a decrease in enrollments in the civil engineering world. And he makes the statement here that many youth question the need to take on hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt to get college education, given both a perception that the promise of success after graduation is not guaranteed, and then the burden of that debt. I would argue that you could get through school without hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, but
I did it.
I did the same thing.
Yep, I did it. It can be done.
You can get through engineering school without hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt. I promise
Yeah. Yeah.
you. Even if you've got a work or find a job, there's so many jobs that help you with educational reimbursement. So
Oh yeah. And
if you're,
there's tons of scholarships that go unused.
mm,
That's a topic of discussion at my industry advisory board every time, is there's
wow,
just thousands and thousands of dollars of scholarships that go unused. And so
wow,
I mean, it's kind of,
got to
it's a
apply for 'em.
reflection of the lower matriculation, right? The lower rates of enrollment in the programs. But yeah, there's money there that can be used.
Yeah. He also makes the point that the ability to develop a trade skill at a lower cost, so the trades that are out there, means that 4-year programs are now competing with other post high school options to attract people. And I think I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like the trades have always been in need of hiring people, and even to this day, I think the trades still have a huge need. And I think
They
it's a
do.
great area to go into too. Like
That is.
I'm not saying that's a bad way to go.
It's
It
not.
could be a great way to go, but he makes that distinction that you know maybe the option for an individual is that they want to go to a trade school. If they were presented two options, do you want to become a civil engineer or do you want to go learn a trade? And maybe they're just looking at the finances at that point and they're saying, well, I can go to a trade school, they pay for everything, and I get out of here and I'm making six figures pretty close to it. And if I go to engineering school, I take on debt and I'm not going to make as much at the beginning. So maybe
Right.
those are two things he's trying to point out there in that article. But I don't know. Maybe that's another topic. But I think the overall topic here is that there's a decrease of enrollment for people coming into the civil engineering world. I haven't looked at any specs or numbers on that. I feel like every year it's actually gotten more and more people have gone into that field, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's less.
Well, we may have a little bit of a local bias, Isaac, but I've felt like that too. However, in a lot of the and again, I work primarily with structural engineering firms. I hear occasionally from those guys that the students that come out of some of these university programs aren't as well trained as they would hope. They're having to invest a little more into their employees' training when they get out of school, getting them up to speed on different things. And so I don't know if that's a
Is that technical training or is that like people skills, soft skills?
no, it's not the soft skills. They're talking about the technical abilities. They
Hmm.
feel like some of the individuals coming out of the programs these days aren't quite as good as they used to be.
And
Um,
I get that. There, I would say for any industry you go into, there's going to be some sort of learning curve,
right,
and
but I hear that in the guys that work for me that work in the trades, carpenters and laborers and stuff. They tell me the same thing that they're
they're just not coming on and
yeah there's
ready to go.
yeah they're
Yeah.
just none of these kids are ready to go.
I just get the sense, so this is my opinion, but every company has a certain culture and climate and how they do things. And it, it takes time to learn that. If you're coming out of school, you're going to know how to do the math probably and the science, but maybe you're not familiar with the software that's being used, or you're not knowing what your boss wants at the end of the day. And you have to learn kind of those
Mhm,
things.
mhm.
And I will say that the more companies train their employees, it's been proven that they have higher retention of those employees. So I think that training is not, we have to invest in your employees. You're going to invest in them. You should invest in them probably anyway if you want to keep them around, because otherwise you're training someone to leave, you
Yeah,
know, in a year or two. So
yeah. No, I agree with that. I agree with that.
anyway, well, back to the article. There's a big elephant in the room that he doesn't address that we want to get to. And it's the very first comment that's left on the article, but it's talking about the salary levels of civil engineers. And maybe
Yeah.
I could read that first comment, but it says, ironically, the most important facet was not discussed: money. Civil engineers are grossly underpaid. Until pay increases significantly, there will be economics, supply, and demand issues.
Yep.
So I can't disagree with the guy.
Yeah.
It's been a battle for civil engineers to raise rates, raise salary, keep prices competitive. We're looked at almost like a commodity. Just do the engineering, crank it out
Mhm.
in the factory, and push it off the floor.
Right.
And
Right.
they
But
don't
you
think
can
it takes creative, reasoning and thinking here to produce a project.
yeah. And so there's definitely some pressure, some upward pressure to keep civil engineers going and I mean some of that is reflected in some of the current stats that we've got, right? Do we want to talk about that a
Yeah,
little
for
bit?
sure.
I mean, just on the 2022 salary report that ASCE issues every year, some of the key stats on that are interesting. They show a median base salary and they show that that's on the rise. So as you track from 2018 to current 2022, the median base salary has gone up like $16,000 a year in that time frame.
Hmm.
So it's steadily increasing, which correlates with the higher demand, right? And So that's a good trend. Civil engineering salaries, the total median pre-tax income is 124,000. It's not bad.
That's not bad. I mean, with inflation, it feels like 124 is maybe like 70. I don't
Yeah,
know,
that's true.
like it used to be.
Yeah,
It
inflation is taking a bite out of that.
doesn't go as far as it used to, but you know,
Mm.
I would, 124 is nothing to be ashamed of either.
Yeah.
Um,
So, I mean, just the increase is keeping up with inflation and going out, above it and beyond it. What's inflation now? We're at 8% or something currently, eight and a
it's,
half.
it's like 7 to 9%. It feels like every
Yeah,
single month.
depending. And so at least these trends are keeping up out ahead of inflation. But that rise in the median base kind of indicates or backs up what we're talking about here, that the demand is still high, but the supply is relatively low. And so those wages are going up. Now, one good thing though, and well, maybe this should be better, but the job satisfaction numbers that ASC lists for 2022, they say that 85.2% of civil engineers are either satisfied or very satisfied with their work. What do you
Hmm.
think about that?
85%. I feel like that's high. But I don't know what it was last year or the year before or whatnot.
Yeah.
Uh,
That number has remained fairly constant. It's gone up a little bit since last year, maybe a percent or two, but it does remain fairly
I ha-
constant.
I have to think that civil engineering is one of the highest with job satisfactions, and maybe it's just because it's tied to like the tangible product that you're making that you get to see. Like
Yeah,
I helped build that. You
that's
know,
where I get my satisfaction is when
most industries don't get to say that.
it's when you've been an old guy like me and you've been in the industry for so long. I can drive anywhere in town and I could just start pointing out the projects that
I
I've worked
helped
on.
build that. I
I
helped
built
design
that.
that.
I was on that one. Yep. And it's kind of cool.
So I want to go back to salaries for just a minute. Eh, they list that median salary of $124,000, which is good, and it's keeping up, I guess, with inflation. I would. I'm just going to play devil's advocate here for a little bit, but I would say that a lot of engineers feel like they don't see that increase because when you are in a firm, you're usually locked into that 2 to 3, 4% raise every year, which is definitely not meeting or beating inflation at all. But where I have seen that, and I can apply this to my very own life, is when I've jumped a position, I jumped a job, then I've been able to get that, um, which is unfortunate. Um, I, I I I hate to see that, but that's the reality of it.
Mhm.
Is that when engineers end up moving jobs or moving to a new firm, you end up getting a higher salary, which in turn beats this inflationary cost that you keeps
Right.
eating at your salary. And it seems that if engineers, and maybe I want to pick your brain on this a little bit, but an engineer that stays there and you get your 2 to 3, 4% raise because they had inflation that was high and you got 4% and you're like, yay, but it was like 9%. So
Right.
anyway, what are your thoughts on, I guess, um, sticking it out, being loyal to that company versus maybe looking around and trying to really get a jump on your salary? I guess maybe it's just tied to, you and your family and what's best for you.
Yeah, I think it does, and I agree with your. I mean, and you've seen it, like you said, in your own life, but that's unfortunately that's kind of the catalyst for discussing things like performance and where your salary is, and when things get real, when they get serious with the manager, and I'm a manager, is when your employee is threatening to leave to go somewhere else. That's all of a sudden when things really get serious
Oh
and you
crap.
really, yep, oh, I got to figure this out. And that's when things change. And it's unfortunate that it happens like that. But it's really kind of the catalyst that gets somebody but the most competitive wage with the level of performance that they've got. Now, there's lots of other things that go into that. I mean, you may be working for a firm that you're comfortable with, and you know the people and the process, and it's just you're in a groove and you're comfortable and you're happy where you're at, and you don't want to make a change. But I don't know. It's just a reality. And as somebody who manages, project engineers and a lot of field forces, I see that happening. That it happens in my firm. Before I make a big change, I'm usually finding out that maybe an individual's maybe a little bit unhappy with their situation. They've been offered something somewhere else, and I have to react to that.
Hmm.
And that's probably not, it's probably not the best way to handle things. But as a manager, a lot of times I'm not even fully aware that that individual is unhappy in the role that they're in. And we try to do those yearly assessments, and we try to make have those at least once a year where we've assessed performance of individuals. But a lot of times, that, as a manager, that kind of blindsides you,
Yeah, I can
because you're
see
just
that.
cruising along, and then you're confronted with it. But in any case, I don't think that I think that that confrontation has to take place usually before you can get those raises and stuff, because it's the whole supply and demand thing. Once your firm that you're working for realizes that you are in demand, in high demand, your skills somewhere else, why then all of a sudden they're a little more willing to see what they can do for you. And unfortunately, that's just the way the market works. But there
Well,
are cases when you might just be happy where you're at, and you don't you're
yeah,
happy with those
I
incremental increases because you're in a comfortable spot and you like it, and it's fine.
that's totally valid. Yeah, you're in a groove. You know what's good. You know you got it good, and you're good at it. So you
Yeah.
know,
Keep it going.
keep it
There's
going.
nothing wrong with that either, if you're good at it. So
And I would never fault somebody for trying to improve themselves, improve their
mm,
salary either.
nope.
People are trying to
Nope.
do what's best for them. And
Nope.
I will say this, like we're talking about civil engineering as a whole. The market right now, I feel like is very hot. Um, I'm in the utility world and you know, it's very hot for engineers. So you can virtually get a job anywhere in the utility world. A lot of that's even remote work. Working from home. So, you know, the market's hot. The salaries, I think, are in a good spot, and they are increasing. They're trying to match with inflation, and it's going to be a steady drive up. So, if
Yep.
you're considering, the civil engineering world, just know that this is a very steady world to be in. You can move around within that. Um, we're talking about jumping jobs and all this stuff, but as a whole, I think it's still a good spot to be
Oh, it's a
for
great
that.
spot. And that's why it's kind of it would be a sad thing for maybe a young person that's trying to get into the field to think that the curriculum that you would have to go through at a university would be a barrier. Um, because once you got through that curriculum and you had your degree, it opens up this huge world of possibilities and opportunities. And so anything you go into requires a level of work and dedication and applying yourself, right?
Yep.
And getting a degree in civil engineering is no different. But you'd hope that young people would look at that, where they're going and what's in store for them after they've put in all that effort, and figure out that it's worth it. It's worth doing.
Well, this has been a fun one to talk about. If anybody's interested, we'll link that article that we are discussing from Dennis Truex in our show notes. And, let us know your thoughts. Shoot me an email, leave a comment in the video, give us a like and a subscribe, and participate in the conversation. Let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know about declining enrollment numbers, salary levels, things of anything to do with that stuff. We love hearing about it. So, Mark, thanks for jumping on and sharing your wisdom again.
You bet. Anytime.
Okay, see you in the next one.
See ya.
Bye. Hey, hope you enjoyed that conversation my brother and I had about President Truex's article. Thankful that he wrote that. Thankful we could talk about it. Civil engineering is a good field to be into, and if you need the resources to help you become a professional engineer, definitely check us out at civilengineeringacademy.com. We've got courses to help you with your FE, courses to help you with your PE. We'll help you get over those huge hurdles and reach your goals and potential. So thanks for sticking around with us today. Give us a like, give us a subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, or share this with a friend if you're listening to it on any of your podcatchers, and go share it with a friend. Anyway, thanks for being here. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.